Hey guys, welcome back to another journey into humanity's grimmer chapters. Before we dive in, fair warning, what you're about to experience might permanently ruin your complaints about forgetting to brush your teeth this morning. If you've ever thought modern life was gross, well, buckle up. And if you're the type who enjoys watching other people's misery from the comfort of your clean, soap-filled bathroom, hit that like button. Trust me, you'll feel grateful for indoor plumbing by the end of this. Now turn off the lights. Light a single candle if you've got one. We're going back to a time when the phrase cleanliness is next to godliness was more of a distant rumor than a life philosophy. You're about to spend a day, just one day, living as an average person in medieval Europe circa, and I promise you by the end of this you'll never take your toothbrush for granted again. The year is 1300, the Black Death hasn't arrived yet. But don't worry, there are plenty of other diseases eager to kill you. You wake up on what passes for a mattress. A cloth sack stuffed with straw that hasn't been changed in, well, let's just say you've stopped counting the months. The straw crackles beneath you and something small and many-legged scurries across your face. Congratulations, you've just met your first bedfellow of the day. There will be many more. The room around you, if we're being generous enough to call it a room, is about the size of a modern walk-in closet, and you share it with your entire family. Your parents are over there in the corner, your 3 siblings are sprawled next to you, and everyone's breathing has created a fog of morning breath so thick you could practically chew it. The air tastes like onions, unwashed bodies, and something that died a while ago, possibly several somethings. Outside you can hear the town stirring to life, roosters crowing, pigs snorting, and the gentle morning sounds of people relieving themselves in the street. Yes, the street, because where else would you go? You sit up, immediately regretting it as your back protests. That straw mattress, it's about as supportive as a wet napkin, and you've got the spine of someone who's been sleeping on rocks for the past however many years you've been alive, which, statistically speaking, probably isn't that many. Life expectancy in medieval Europe hovered somewhere around better than a mayfly, worse than a modern house cat. Time to start your day. In the modern world, you'd stumble to the bathroom, maybe splash some water on your face, brush your teeth, take a shower. Simple, right? Well, in medieval times, your morning routine is about as complex as falling off a log, mainly because that's pretty much all you do. You don't wash your face. Why? Several reasons actually, and historians love to debate about which one is the most depressing. First, there's the water situation. The nearest clean water source might be a well in the town square, assuming clean is a term we're using very, very loosely. More likely you're looking at water that's been sitting in a communal barrel for God knows how long, developing a film on top that moves when you poke it. But here's the thing that'll really bake your noodle. Many people actually believed washing was bad for you, not just inconvenient, actively harmful. The prevailing medical theory, borrowed from ancient Greek physicians who clearly never had to smell medieval Europe, was that washing opened up your pores and let disease in. Better to keep that protective layer of grime sealed tight against your skin like some kind of horrible living armor. Your skin, by the way, has taken on a grayish hue that's part natural human coloring, part embedded dirt, and part something we probably don't want to identify too closely. When you scratch an itch, and you're always scratching something, your fingernails come away with material that could probably be classified as its own ecosystem. The closest you get to washing is maybe wiping your face with a damp cloth if you're feeling particularly fancy. But water is precious. Soap is expensive when it exists at all, and honestly everyone else smells just as bad as you do, so what's the point? Time for breakfast, assuming you can afford such a luxury. You stumble outside past the pile of human waste that's been accumulating by your door for the past week. The smell hits you like a physical wall, but here's the weird thing. You barely notice it anymore. The human nose is remarkably adaptable, and yours gave up trying to distinguish between bad and catastrophically bad smells months ago. The streets are already alive with activity, and by alive I mean literally crawling with life. Rats scurry between your feet. So bold they barely bother to avoid you. Why should they? You're not exactly an imposing figure. Malnutrition has left you looking like a scarecrow that's been left out in the rain too long. And those rats have learned that humans in your neighborhood are more likely to keel over than pose any real threat. Breakfast, if you're lucky, consists of some bread, not the fluffy white stuff you're used to. This is dense, dark, and has things in it that definitely didn't start out as wheat. Sometimes the baker grinds in sawdust to bulk up the loaves. Sometimes worse things find their way into the There's a reason people in medieval times had such strong teeth. They needed them to survive their food. The bread is hard enough to use as a weapon, and you've learned to soak it in whatever liquid is available to make it edible. Today that liquid is ale, not because you're some kind of medieval party animal, but because ale is literally safer to drink than water. The brewing process kills most of the nasties that would otherwise have you dying of dysentery by lunch. The ale tastes like liquid bread mixed with disappointment. But it's wet and it won't immediately kill you, so down it goes. You're about to learn that not immediately deadly is pretty much the gold standard for medieval cuisine. Let's talk about your teeth for a moment, shall we? Look, I know this is gonna hurt, but you need to understand what you're working with here. Open your mouth and run your tongue across your teeth. Feel that fuzzy coating. That's plaque that's been building up for, well, let's just say toothbrushes won't be invented for another few centuries. Your teeth are yellow, not like I need to cut back on coffee. Yellow, more like I found these in an archaeological dig yellow. Some of them are brown, some of them are black, some of them are missing entirely, leaving gaps that whistle when you talk. The pain is constant but manageable. You've learned to chew on the left side because the right side has that tooth that sends lightning bolts through your skull if you so much as breathe on it wrong. Sometimes you try to dig the rot out with a stick or a piece of metal, but mostly you just avoid certain foods and hope for the best. Dental care in medieval times was a lot like medieval medicine in general. Brutal, ineffective, and administered by people who learned their trade through trial and error. Mostly error. If a tooth got bad enough, you might visit the local barber surgeon, who would yank it out with pliers while you bit down on a leather strap and tried not to scream loud enough to wake the dead. Your gums bleed when you eat. They bleed when you don't eat. They bleed when you think about eating. The metallic taste of blood is such a constant companion that you've stopped noticing it, the same way you've stopped noticing the smell of sewage and the feeling of lice crawling through your hair. Oh, did I mention the lice? Because we need to talk about the lice. Every person in medieval Europe had lice. Rich, poor, noble, peasant, didn't matter. Lice were the great equalizer, the ultimate democracy. Your hair is home to an entire civilization of tiny biting creatures who treat your scalp like their personal all-you-can-eat buffet. You can feel them moving. Right now as you're sitting there, there's a gentle tickling sensation as dozens of tiny legs navigate through the forest of your unwashed hair. You reach up to scratch and your fingernails come away with little dark specks. Some of them are still moving. The itching is maddening. It's constant. You scratch until you bleed, which just gives the lice something new to feast on. Your scalp is covered in scabs and sores from all the scratching, and some of those sores have gotten infected, adding a whole new layer of misery to your existence. But here's the really fun part. It's not just head lice. Body lice have set up shop in the seams of your clothing, which you haven't washed in months. They've turned the fabric into their personal nursery, laying eggs in the threads and emerging at night to feed on your blood. Your clothes move sometimes when you're sitting still, and it's not the wind. Pubic lice, oh yes, they're there too. Every part of your body that has hair has become an ecosystem for tiny biting parasites. You've basically become a walking nature preserve for creatures whose entire life purpose is making you miserable. The worst part, there's no real solution. You can pick them off one by one. Many people spend their evenings engaged in communal delousing sessions, like the world's grossest social activity. But for every one you remove, 10 more are hatching. It's like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon. Some people try smoking them out by holding their clothes over fires, But that usually just makes you smell like smoke in addition to everything else. Others try various folk remedies involving herbs and oils, but mostly these just add new smells to your already complex bouquet of human misery. Let's discuss your wardrobe. And by wardrobe I mean the single set of clothes you've been wearing for the past 6 months. Fashion in medieval times was less about looking good and more about not freezing to death. Though honestly you're not doing great on either. Your shirt, if we can call it that, was once a color. Maybe brown, maybe gray, possibly beige. Now it's the color of everything. Dirt, sweat, food stains, blood and other substances we're not going to identify too closely. The fabric has taken on a texture that's part cloth, part grease and part something that might have once been alive. The smell of your clothes has evolved beyond simple human odor into something that could probably be weaponized. It's a complex bouquet of unwashed human animal waste, rotting food and that particular smell of fabric that's been wet and dried too many times without ever being properly cleaned. When you move you leave a little cloud of your scent behind you like the world's most depressing perfume commercial. Your pants, and I use the term loosely, are held up by a rope that's seen better centuries. The fabric is worn thin in strategic places, providing ventilation you never asked for and don't particularly want. But new clothes are expensive, and you can't afford expensive. So you make do with what you have until it literally falls apart. Your shoes are a masterwork of improvisation and desperation. They might have started life as leather, but they've been patched and repatched with whatever materials were available. Cloth, rope, other pieces of leather from animals you probably don't want to think about too hard. The soles have holes that let in water, mud and whatever else you happen to step in during your daily travels through the medieval wasteland. Speaking of which, let's talk about what you're stepping in. Step outside and welcome to the world's most extensive toilet facility. The streets of medieval towns weren't just roads, they were sewers, garbage dumps and animal highways, all rolled into one charming package. Every step you take squelches slightly, and it's not just mud making that sound. Human waste, it goes in the street. Animal waste, street. Kitchen scraps, street. Dead animals, you guessed it, street. The concept of waste management hadn't so much been invented as it had been actively avoided. Why build elaborate systems to dispose of garbage when you can just throw it out your front door and let gravity sort it out? The town you're walking through follows the medieval urban planning philosophy of let's just pile everything in one place and see what happens. What happens, as you're discovering, is that everything rots together into a sort of primordial soup of decomposition that squelches underfoot and releases new and exciting smells with every step. You have to watch where you're walking. Not because you might trip, but because residents have developed the charming habit of dumping their chamber pots directly out their windows. There's supposed to be a warning system. People are meant to shout, "Guard low," before dumping their waste. But compliance is spotty at best. Sometimes you get a warning. Sometimes you get a face full of someone else's bodily functions. The animals roaming the streets add their own special contributions to the mix. Pigs root through the garbage. Cows wander freely and chickens peck at whatever catches their fancy. All of these animals are doing what animals do, which is relieving themselves wherever they happen to be standing. The result is a street surface that's part cobblestone, part organic matter, and part things we're definitely not going to think about too hard. Your shoes, already in questionable condition, pick up samples of everything you walk through. By the end of the day, you'll have tracked the essence of the entire neighborhood into your home, adding yet another layer to your dwelling's complex aromatic profile. Time for work, assuming you're lucky enough to have any. Medieval job opportunities were about as plentiful as medieval dental care, which is to say, not very. But let's say you've managed to secure employment in one of the era's booming industries. Leatherworking. The tannery where you work is an assault on every sense you possess. The process of turning animal hide into leather involves soaking the skins in a mixture of water, lime, and other chemicals that were probably discovered by accident when someone noticed that certain combinations of substances could strip hair and preserve hide. The smell is indescribable. Imagine the worst smell you've ever encountered. Then imagine something 10 times worse. Then realize you're not even close. But wait, it gets better. Traditional tanning methods involved something called baiting, which required soaking the hides in a solution of animal dung and urine. Dogs were specifically fed a diet designed to produce the right kind of waste for the process. Yes, you read that correctly. Your job involves working with solutions made from carefully curated animal excrement. The work is physical, disgusting, and dangerous. You're constantly handling chemicals that burn your skin and breathing fumes that make your eyes water and your lungs feel like they're dissolving. Your hands, already in rough shape from general medieval living, are now permanently stained and cracked from the tanning solution. The skin on your fingers has taken on a texture that's more like leather than flesh. Your coworkers are exactly what you'd expect from people who choose to spend their days handling decomposing animal parts. They're rough, crude, and they smell like death warmed over. But they're also the closest thing to friends you have, because nobody else will get near enough to socialize with someone who works in a tannery. The building itself is a testament to medieval engineering, which is to say it's held together by hope and habit. The roof leaks. The walls are stained with substances that might be tanning chemicals or might be something worse, and the floor is permanently damp with liquids you've learned not to identify too closely. Midday brings a break from work, though break is a relative term when your entire existence is basically one long exercise in endurance. You sit outside the tannery with your fellow workers, sharing whatever food you've managed to scrape together for the day. Today's meal consists of some questionable meat that might be pork, might be beef, or might be something that used to run on 4 legs before ending up in a pot. The cooking process involved boiling it until it stopped moving, then boiling it some more for good measure. It's tough, salty, and has a texture that suggests it's been dead for quite a while before making it to your bowl. You eat with your hands because cutlery is for rich people and people who aren't covered in tanning chemicals. Your fingernails, already home to various bacteria and small organisms, pick up samples of your meal for later enjoyment. The taste is, well, it's protein, and protein keeps you alive, so down it goes. The bread that accompanies your meal is the same dense, dark stuff from the morning, possibly left over from yesterday or the day before. It's developed a greenish tinge in places that might be mold or might be some kind of medieval season. Either way, you eat around the worst spots and hope for the best. For drink, you have more ale, because water is still not safe and probably won't be for several more centuries. The ale is warm, flat, and tastes like it was brewed in someone's boot, but it's liquid and it won't immediately kill you, which puts it in the top tier of medieval beverages. You eat quickly, partly because the food isn't exactly savory enough to linger over, and partly because sitting still too long allows the local insect population to find you. Flies are particularly interested in your meal, and they're not picky about whether they sample your food before or after it enters your mouth. Back to work, where the afternoon sun has managed to make everything worse. The tannery, which was merely horrific in the morning, has now been baking in the heat for several hours. The smells have intensified, the chemicals have concentrated, and the flies have called their friends. Your job involves moving heavy, wet hides from one vat of chemicals to another. Each hide is soaked with the tanning solution, which means you're constantly splashed with substances that burn your skin and clothes. Your shirt, already a historical record of every meal you've eaten in the past month, now gains new stains that will never come out. The physical labor is taking its toll. Your back, already protesting from sleeping on straw, now has the added insult of lifting objects that weigh more than you do. Your hands are cramping from gripping the slippery hides, and the chemicals are eating through your skin, leaving burns and sores that will probably never heal properly. The other workers are in similar condition. Old Martin, who's been doing this for 20 years, has hands that look like pieces of leather themselves. Young Tom, who started last month, spends most of his time vomiting behind the building until his body adjusts to the constant assault on his senses. If it ever the heat makes everything worse. Your already questionable clothes become soggy with sweat, creating a new layer of moisture for the bacteria that have colonized your body. The smell of unwashed human becomes even more pronounced, mixing with the tanning chemicals to create a bouquet that could probably strip paint. By afternoon's end, you're not just tired, you're exhausted on a level that reaches into your bone. Every part of your body hurts, and you smell like something that died and then was processed into leather. But the workday isn't over yet. Work at the tannery might be finished, but your day is far from over. Like most medieval people, you have a side hustle, because one job isn't enough to keep you fed and housed. Tonight, you're helping your neighbor slaughter a pig. The pig in question is not going quietly. Medieval pigs were not the docile pink creatures of modern farming. They were basically wild boars with attitude problems. This one has been squealing and fighting since sunrise, and by the time you arrive to help, it's worked itself into a frenzy of terror and rage. The slaughter is not quick or clean. Medieval butchering techniques were effective but rough, and the process involves a lot of blood screaming from the pig and cursing from the human. You hold the animal while your neighbor does the actual killing, which means you get covered in pig blood from head to toe. The blood is warm and sticky, and it soaks through your clothes to your skin underneath. It has a metallic smell that mingles with your existing bouquet of odors to create something entirely new and terrible. Your hair is matted with it, your face is splattered with it, and your hands are completely red. The butchering process continues with skinning and gutting, which involves removing the pig's internal organs and sorting them into piles of useful and probably useful, and we'll figure something out. Nothing goes to waste in medieval times, not because people are environmentally conscious, but because waste is a luxury you can't afford. Your job is to hold things, carry things, and try not to vomit when the smell of pig intestines mingles with everything else you've been breathing all day. The combination is challenging. Your neighbor who's done this before seems immune to the smell, but you spend most of the evening breathing through your mouth and trying to think about something else. By the time you're finished, the sun is setting, and you're covered in pig blood, tanning chemicals, sweat, and whatever else you've collected during the day. You look like a walking crime scene, and you smell even worse. Home at last, where your family has prepared the evening meal with the same level of culinary skill that sustained humanity through the medieval period. Boil everything until it stops fighting back. Tonight's menu features some of the pig you just helped slaughter, which means you're about to eat something whose blood is still under your fingernails. The meat has been chopped into chunks and thrown into a pot with whatever vegetables your family managed to grow or trade for. Some onions that have seen better days, root vegetables that might be carrots or might be turnips, and some green things that were probably edible when they were harvested. The cooking process involves boiling everything in the same pot until it reaches a consistency that could charitably be called stew and more accurately be described as things floating in brown water. There's no seasoning except salt if you're lucky, and whatever herbs your mother managed to grow in the tiny plot behind your house. You eat from a wooden bowl that's been carved out of a single piece of wood and has never been properly cleaned. The wood has absorbed flavors from every meal you've ever eaten from it, creating a kind of archaeological record of your diet that you taste with every bite. The spoon, also wooden, has been worn smooth by countless meals and has developed a patina that's part food residue, part bacteria, and part things we're not gonna think about. The meat is tough and requires serious chewing. Your damaged teeth are up for the challenge, but every bite sends little jolts of pain through your skull from that bad tooth on the right side. You've learned to chew slowly and carefully, because biting down wrong can produce pain that makes you see stars. The vegetables have been cooked into submission, becoming a mushy mass that tastes like whatever they were boiled with. The broth has a film of fat floating on top that moves when you breathe on it, and the whole mixture has a temperature that ranges from scalding at the top to lukewarm at the bottom. Your family eats in relative silence, because talking while eating requires opening your mouth,
and opening your mouth releases the taste of whatever you're chewing into your nasal passages. It's better to just power through and get the meal over with as quickly as possible. After dinner, there's still some daylight left, which means it's time for the medieval equivalent of social media. Standing around with your neighbors and complaining about how terrible everything is. You gather in the street with the other residents of your charming neighborhood, creating a small crowd of people who all smell exactly as bad as you do. The collective aroma is impressive. Dozens of unwashed bodies, each contributing their own unique blend of sweat, dirt, animal waste and occupational hazard. The conversation topics are about what you'd expect. Who died recently, always a popular subject. Whose crops are failing, most of them, and whether the latest batch of grain has more or less sawdust than usual. It's hard to tell. Someone mentions that the baker's
adding ground bone to the bread flour, which explains the gritty texture you've been noticing lately. Old Willem, who's about 40 and therefore ancient by medieval standards, regales the group with tales of the time he visited the next town over and saw a man who owned 2 shirts. 2 shirts. The luxury is almost unimaginable. Someone else mentions hearing about a noble who bathes once a month, which sounds like the kind of wild extravagance that could only exist in stories. The children run around between the adults, playing games that mostly involve throwing things at each other and seeing who can make the most noise. They're covered in the same layer of grime as everyone else, but they have the energy that comes from not yet understanding how terrible their situation actually is. Give them a few years. As darkness falls, the gathering breaks up. Everyone heads back to their respective hovels to prepare for another night of sleeping on straw and sharing space with insects. You wave goodbye to your neighbors, a gesture that releases a small cloud of your personal scent into the evening air. Back in your family's single room, it's time to prepare for sleep. Prepare is probably too strong a word. Mostly it involves taking off your shoes and lying down on the straw. Your shoes, which have been marinating in street substances all day, come off with a wet sound that you've learned not to think about too hard. Your feet, which have been enclosed in leather that's absorbed sweat and who knows what else, smell like something that should probably be treated with fire. You don't change clothes because you don't have other clothes to change into. The outfit you're wearing is the outfit you'll be wearing tomorrow and the day after that. And the day after that. It's become less like clothing and more like a second skin, albeit a second skin that's made of fabric and regret. The straw mattress crackles as you settle onto it, releasing a small cloud of dust and particles that make you sneeze. Something scurries away from the warmth of your body, probably a mouse, possibly something larger. You've learned not to investigate too closely. Your family settles in around you. Parents, siblings, possibly a grandparent if anyone's lived that long. Everyone's breathing contributes to the room's atmosphere, creating a fog of exhalation that you can almost see in the dim light from the dying fire. The itching starts almost immediately. The lice, which have been relatively quiet during the day, wake up for their evening feeding session. You scratch absently, trying to find a position that doesn't put pressure on your sore back or your empty stomach. Outside, you can hear the sounds of the town settling in for the night. Pigs grunting, dogs barking, people coughing, and the occasional scream that might be someone in pain or might be someone having a particularly vivid nightmare. It's hard to tell the difference. Sleep, when it comes, is not the peaceful rest of the modern world. It's more like a temporary ceasefire between you and consciousness, interrupted regularly by various discomforts and disturbances. The lice are most active at night, emerging from their hiding places to feed on your blood while you're too tired to fight back effectively. You wake up periodically to scratch, sometimes drawing blood with your fingernails, sometimes catching one of the larger specimens between your fingers with a small popping sound. Your stomach, never quite full even after dinner, makes its displeasure known with gurgles and cramps that wake you from whatever dreams you might have been having. Medieval dreams, by the way, are probably not the pleasant fantasies you're used to. They're more likely fever dreams induced by malnutrition and constant discomfort. The straw beneath you has compressed into lumps and valleys that dig into your ribs and hip bone. You shift position regularly, trying to find some arrangement that doesn't leave you feeling like you've been beaten with sticks. Sometimes you succeed for a few minutes. Your family's sleeping sounds provide a constant soundtrack: snoring, coughing, the occasional moan of pain, and sounds that might be talking or might be something else entirely. Your father has developed a cough that sounds like it's coming from somewhere deep in his chest, and you try not to think about what that might mean. The room's temperature fluctuates between too cold and too hot, depending on how close you are to the dying fire and how many family members are pressed against you for warmth. There's no middle ground, no comfortable temperature, just various degrees of discomfort. Around what might be midnight, you're awakened by a new sensation. Something warm and wet, spreading across the straw beneath you. One of your siblings has wet the bed, which in medieval times is less wet the bed and more wet the communal sleeping area. The smell of urine mingles with all the other smells in the room, adding yet another layer to your olfactory experience. Lying there in the dark, listening to your family sleep and feeling various creatures crawl across your skin, you have time to contemplate your situation. This is your life. This is every day of your life. This is every day of everyone's life, except for a tiny handful of people who were born into circumstances that you can't even imagine. You think about the nobles you've heard about, the ones who live in castles and eat meat every day and own more than one set of clothes. They seem like mythical creatures, beings from another world entirely. The gap between your existence and theirs is so vast that it might as well be the gap between Earth and the stars. But even those lucky few, the ones at the very top of the social pyramid, don't have what you'd consider basic necessity. They might bathe more often, once a month instead of once a season, but they still live with lice and fleas and the constant threat of disease. They might eat better food, but they still don't have toilets or toothbrushes or any real understanding of what makes people sick. The darkness around you is complete. There are no street lights, no electric signs, no glow from televisions or computers. When the sun goes down, the world goes dark, and it stays dark until dawn. The only light comes from fires, and fuel for fires is expensive, so mostly you just live in darkness and hope nothing terrible happens. You can hear rats in the walls gnawing on whatever they've found to eat. Sometimes they gnaw on people, usually the very young or the very old or the very sick. You've learned to keep your hands under the blanket, such as it is, and to sleep with your mouth closed. The night seems endless, a long stretch of discomfort interrupted by brief periods of unconsciousness. You drift in and out of sleep, never quite resting, never quite awake, existing in a state of semi-conscious misery that will continue until dawn. Morning comes eventually, announced by roosters and the sounds of people beginning another day of survival. You open your eyes to find that you've made it through another night, which is actually an achievement in medieval times. Lots of people go to sleep and don't wake up, victims of disease or cold or malnutrition, or just the general difficulty of staying alive when everything is trying to kill you. Your body has stiffened during the night, joints locking up from the cold and the uncomfortable sleeping surface. You sit up slowly, feeling vertebrae crack and muscles protest. Your back feels like it's been beaten with clubs. Your neck has a crick that makes it hard to turn your head, and your legs have gone numb from lying on the uneven straw. The room smells like a crime scene. Overnight, the various odors have had time to ferment and combine, creating new and exciting scents that assault your nose as soon as you're conscious enough to process them. It's like waking up inside a compost pile that's been left to rot in the sun. Your mouth tastes like something died in it, which is not entirely impossible given the state of your teeth. Your tongue feels fuzzy, your gums are tender, and that bad tooth on the right side is sending sharp pains through your skull with every heartbeat. Around you, your family is beginning to stir. Everyone looks about as good as you feel, which is to say they look like extras from a zombie movie. Hair matted, skin gray, eyes sunken from chronic malnutrition and poor sleep. These are the people you love, and they're all slowly dying from the simple act of being alive in medieval Europe. And so begins another day, identical to yesterday,
Identical to tomorrow. Identical to every day you've lived and every day you'll ever live. You'll eat the same terrible food, do the same back-breaking work, smell the same horrible smells, and sleep on the same uncomfortable straw. This is your life. This is everyone's life. There's no weekend, no vacation, no retirement. You work until you're too old or too sick to work, and then you die. If you're lucky, you might live to see 30. If you're very lucky, you might live to see 40. If you're so lucky that you're basically a statistical anomaly, you might make it to 50, but probably not. You stand up, bones creaking like old wood, and prepare to face another day in humanity's grimmer chapters. The sun is rising over your medieval town, casting light on streets filled with waste and buildings held together by hope and habit. The air fills with the sounds of life, beginning animals stirring, people coughing, children crying, and the general bustle of a community that's managed to survive another night. It's going to be a beautiful day. Now take a deep breath of your clean, filtered air. Feel that soft chair you're sitting in. Appreciate those clean clothes you're wearing. Run your tongue across those relatively healthy teeth. Think about the bathroom down the hall with its running water and soap and toilet paper. Think about the shower you'll take later, the toothbrush you'll use, the clean sheets you'll sleep on tonight.